Hey besties, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ayana for you guys who are new here. In today's video, we're going to go over some of my top 10 to 15 candle making terms that I feel are very important for you to know when you're starting off as a candle maker. It's just so hard to get lost in conversation sometimes if you don't understand what certain acronyms mean or what certain terms mean. So hopefully by the end of this video, you have a way better understanding of some of those terms. In the description box, there is going to be a printable PDF file that you can print off and have handy in your workspace so that you can always refer back to it if any acronyms come up that you just have no idea what they mean. There's going to be a lot more terms on there that I'm not going to talk about in this video, but today I'm just going to go over some of the most common ones that you will see quite often. So the first term on that list, we have FT, HT, and CT. So FT is going to be your fragrance throw, your HT is going to be your hot throw, and then your CT is going to be your cold throw. Fragrance throw and hot throw pretty much mean the same thing. It just means the scent that's being emitted from your candle when it's lit up. And then your cold throw is going to be the scent that is being given off when your candle's at room temperature and at a solid. A lot of times we forget how important both of those are. I think a lot of times we just think, oh, long as my fragrance throw is good or my hot throw is good, once my candle is lit up, then I should be fine. But we oftentimes forget that our cold throw is the first impression that we're giving off to our customers. I think it's important that you have a great fragrance throw and also a good cold throw when it comes to your candles. Second on the list, we have wicking and wick. So this just means your wick is the material that is going to fuel the flame to your candle. Wicks are so important when it comes to candle making. A lot of times if you're having trouble with your candle, you will soon realize that wick plays such a vital role into your candle. So it's important to understand what wicking means, wick sizing, the different brands, the different materials, all that. Because there's cotton wicks and then there's also wooden wicks, but then there's so many different variations of the different cotton wicks, so it's very important to understand those wicks. Next, that brings me to wicking up or wicking down. If you hear the term wick up, that just means that you need to go up in size with your wick, and then if you hear the term wick down, that means that you need to go down in size with your wick. It's always important to check your manufacturer's recommendations when it comes to wicking. Usually when you buy any wicks from any company, they're going to give you a wicking guide chart. Although that wicking guide chart is just their recommendations of things that they have tried, it's definitely so important for you to test this on your own. You may have a completely different formula than they have. As I said before, wicking is one of those things that you just can't run away from. You have to constantly test. It's also important to know that different wicks perform differently when you start to add in different fragrances, when you're adding in different wax, adding in dye, additives, just so many different things. So many times where I'm using the same jar, the same wax, the same everything. The only thing that I'm changing is the fragrance oil, and then the wick performs completely different. You also have to take into account different fragrance loads and things like that. This brings me to my next term. We have tunneling. So tunneling is when your wick just does not create a full melt pool across your candle, which means that it leaves a ring of wax around your candle and then it causes your candle to just burn straight down. Tunneling is not necessarily the end of the world. On your second and third attempt burn, you'll realize that the tunneling just subsides and it fixes itself. You just needed more time to burn, but then sometimes you'll realize that the tunneling is not stopping, and that sometimes means that you do need to go ahead and wick up, that your wick size was way too small, was not able to light itself up or get hot enough to burn the candle completely. So that brings me to my next term, which is melt pool. The melt pool is just the wax that liquefies as your candle is burning. You want to make sure when you have your melt pool that it's no more than a ½ inch. Anything over a ½ inch means that your wick is burning way too hot and you're not getting the full potential and quality out of your candle because you're burning through your candles way too fast. So sometimes if your melt pool is just way too deep and you've only been burning it for 30 minutes to an hour, or even sometimes 2 hours, and you're way more than that 1/4 or 1/8 of an inch, then you might want to go ahead and reconsider the wicking size and go ahead and wick down. The goal is to achieve a balanced burn across the diameter of the jar. Sometimes it's going to take 2 to 3 burn attempts for your candle to burn evenly. The next term that we have is mushrooming. Mushrooming is when your wick has too much carbon buildup around the tip of the wick. So this is what it usually would look like. too bad, but as you can see, it is definitely beginning to mushroom. And a lot of times mushrooming is not a bad thing, so don't think, oh my god, like what now? Sometimes all you have to do to combat your mushrooming issue is to just trim your wick. But then sometimes the carbon buildup can mean just too much fragrance oil, you've added in too much additives. It could be the wax getting on the wick, it could be that you've used too large of a wick. Sometimes you need to just decrease some of those things. Sometimes mushrooming is just not as bad as we think. A simple solution as just trimming your wick. Next up, we have sinkholes. So sinkholes is just a cavity or hole that creates or forms itself once your candle has solidified. And sometimes what that means is when you've poured your candle in at different temperatures, once it tried to solidify, it created air pockets within the candle. There are a few techniques that you can use to combat your sinkholes. One would be to just do a second pour, and what that means is some people will pour their candle halfway and then they will heat more wax and then pour the second batch on top and create the full candle. Sometimes they would just the candle as normal, but then they would go ahead and burn a second batch of wax and then just fill in those sinkholes. Sometimes it could be that your candle jar was just too cold at the time, and so a lot of people will use heat guns to heat up their jars so that when they do pour, it doesn't change the temperature of the wax as they're pouring it into the jar or vessel that they're using. You can also pour at lower temperatures, or you can also use the method of putting your jars inside the oven, which will heat up your jars evenly, same as heating them up with the heat gun. So don't freak out if you get sinkholes. So a lot of time with like soy wax, which is 464, or sometimes with 6006 wax. For me, I use coconut soy wax, and sinkholes is just not an issue that I have with that wax. Rest assured, each wax has its pros and cons. You just have to figure out the ways to work around it, and then there's so many resources out there to help you. Next up, we have FO, and then we have EO. FO is going to be your fragrance oil, a man-made blend, sometimes of a synthetic blend or a natural blend, and this is what's going to be used to add scent to your candles. And then you have EO, which is an essential oil. Essential oils are extracted from plants, leaves, wood, grass. A really good natural way to add scent into your candles. Essential oils usually come in singular scents, which means they are ideal for creating your own blended and unique scents, which is really cool. Usually when you get fragrance oils, they're already are based with a top, middle, and bottom base, so they already been constructed of different blends to get that one scent. So there's definitely pros and cons to that, but you'll just have to do your research and see which one will be best for your company. Next term that I have on my list is fragrance load. Fragrance load is going to be your manufacturer's recommended amount of fragrance oil that you can add into your wax. And I have to do your research on this. For coconut soy, I believe 12% is the highest maxed out fragrance oil that you can use. That fragrance load percentages will vary from wax to wax. Maxing out on your fragrance load does not equate to a stronger scented candle. Once you start to really learn your candles, you're gonna realize really fast that a lot of the times less is more. When I first started, I would max out on my percentages and candle still doesn't smell like anything. And then I started using lower percentages like 6, 7, 8, even 9%. And I'm realizing like, oh my God, the aroma is so strong, really emit throughout the room. It's able to fill up in a larger space. So just remember, as a new beginner, when you're first starting out, like, so you don't make the same mistakes that I did, is that sometimes using those lower percentage fragrances, and then as you test it and you're like, okay, I can go up 1%, I can go up like that, but you don't necessarily need to start off at the top. Obviously, in theory, it makes sense, but practically, once you begin to test, you will soon realize that to achieve a great quality candle, you do not need to use the max fragrance load. Just always make sure that you're checking with your manufacturer product specifications when it comes to your fragrance oils. Next up, we have the double boiler, and the double boiler method is just a method of 2 pans being nested together, and on the bottom one you're going to fill it with water. And this is just a method that candle makers in the beginning use to melt down their wax. Once you get in the candle making game and you're ready to start investing more of your money, you're gonna go over to the Presto Pot and the Digi Boil. But when you first start off, the double boiler method is a great way to melt down your wax at a slower temperature. Next up, we have flash point. Flash points is the temperature at which your candle can become combustible if it's exposed to a flame or a spark. Usually this is important for people who use gel wax when you're determining different shipping methods. There is a certain temperature that you have to pour the gel wax at. Next up, we have FTC regulations, and although this is not a term that you will see quite often, I did want to throw in there that FTC regulations is something that I think is important for you guys to look up. FTC stands for the Federal Trade Commission, and make sure you look up your FTC regulations because this is going to make sure that you are in compliance with your labeling and packaging. I do have a video on labeling that I will link here so that you can go watch if you haven't seen that one already. But I want to make sure that everyone is always in compliance when it comes to labels, your packaging, and obviously with your business as well. But when it comes to being in compliance, you just want to make sure if anything was to happen that you wouldn't be held liable and that your insurance wouldn't be voided because you did not follow regulations or that you weren't in compliance. And you guys, I believe that's all the candle making terms that I have for you today. Don't forget to click the link down below. I'm going to be adding in a full list of PDF printable file for you guys. It can be readily available for you whenever you need it. You can put it in your workspace. Don't forget to let me know down in the comment section when you first started out as a candle maker, or if you are new, let me know what terms tripped you up a lot in the beginning. And thank you guys as always for watching, supporting me, and I will see you guys in the next video.